Playing on virtual tabletops is very different than playing in real life, but with just a few tricks, you can make it just as immersive. Hey folks, I'm Alex Story, and welcome back to Dungeon Fire, where I discuss D&D and share all the things I've learned over the years to make your games even more awesome. And if you're watching this video, you're looking to make your Roll20 game as immersive as possible. You saw that title and you want the tips, and luckily I have some tips I'd love to share with you that I think work. And with my 7 years of experience using Roll20 as a Dungeon Master, I'd love to share what I know. And first off, there's no way around this. You need to make sure that you have cameras on in your virtual tabletop play. It's crucial. Do whatever you can to make sure that folks have their cameras and they have them on, because you need to have those body language reactions, because with cameras on, you can see folks viscerally react when that critical hit happens, or when the barbarian fails their death save, or when something amazing happens. You can share in the laughs and kind of like the fears that folks have around the table. You don't really get that when folks have their camera off. You don't get that sight feedback to what's happening around the table. And as a Dungeon Master, that's super important, because you can use folks' body language as a way to gauge how you're running your game. If folks are leaning on their table, like doing one of these, then you have to switch things up, because you throw a monster at them. Make sure that character is involved in the role play, or it's your cue to start a break. There's no shame in that. So that's what you can use when you have webcams on. You can use those cues to help you run your game. But beyond that, having a camera on lets you add some pizzazz to what's going on in your background. Which brings us to number 2, which is using your props, costumes, and lighting. Because let's face it, you're the Dungeon Master. That means 90% of the time, your players are looking at you. You have their attention. You're describing the scenes. You're playing the monsters. And they're looking at your camera, and they're going to see what's going on behind you. So if you're wearing a costume of like a lich, they might really get into it. If you are, if you have your lights dim, you have skulls behind you, and you have little candles flickering, that's gonna add to the effect. Treat your background as a set, and treat your body as like a painting, I guess. I know that's a weird metaphor, but you know what I mean. You can even use the lights color in your room. So I have these color changing lights in my room, and so let's say I wanted to have an angry scene going on, I can go ahead and just turn both my lights to this kind of red color, right? So I can be like, yeah, you're entering the elemental dungeon with the giant fire elemental as it curls out of the lava, launching globs of molten steel at you, whatever. That's something I can add to the atmosphere by changing the lights that I have going on. And, color lights, aren't too expensive. You could probably buy these for $30 on Amazon. But they add a lot of flair to the situation. So speaking of props, you can use props in the virtual tabletop, like a handout. Handouts are crucial to making your games super immersive. If you want to describe an amazing character or an amazing NPC or an amazing monster, and you just don't have the words for it, then you can just plop up a picture of it so they can see exactly what is in your mind's eye when you're thinking of the adversary they're approaching. You want to show a fantastic location, have a picture of that. Maybe you want to give them a map of the city. Boom, they have an art handout right in Roll20 that you can show to them. They can reference back at a later time. And you can use it for even more complicated things. Maybe you're handing them parts of a puzzle and they can link it together. Maybe you're giving them a riddle. Maybe you're just giving them a secret note from somebody. The possibilities are endless. So use your art handouts. That's a way that you can use a prop in your game. And this next trick to make your games immersive is something that you've seen before, and that's using your voice. And we've all seen folks make, awesome voice acting performances, from Critical Role to maybe even some of your home games. I know I do a couple good impressions that I like to roll out in my games to make some characters super immersive. But one thing that you might forget about sometimes is you don't necessarily need to always use an accent or use a funny voice to make characters more immersive and more expressive. you can just use your tonality. You can use the volume of your voice. You can use kind of like the dynamic features going up and down, high and low pitch, just using your natural voice to make what you're saying more interesting. You want something to kind of be a little bit more creepy and sinister. Maybe you use this soft voice. You want to kind of convey like a more robotic NPC, you just use a monotone voice. What you do does not matter to me, right? I haven't changed my voice there. I'm not making a funny voice. I am just using the tone, the speed, the volume of my voice to add dynamic elements to it. So that's one thing that helps. So I'm not a super verbose guy. I don't go around speaking soliloquies into the night air, and I really probably use the vocab of like a 5th grader in my average day-to-day life. And because of that, sometimes the scenes that I use aren't as flowery as some of the scenes that you see on Critical Role. And there's a couple things that I'm doing to kind of combat that, and some tips that I would recommend that you use. And that is read. Reading is big. Reading books allows your vocab to expand like crazy. Read fantasy books, read science fiction books. You'll get a lot of words from those books that you can use in your games, and you can even, borrow that for inspiration for your homebrew as well. But another thing that you can do is use onomatopoeia. Use your sound effects. You can use sound effects to add elements, right? If you want to describe what's going on, like the whistling of something, just go ahead and whistle. Right? That's the whistling wind as it goes through the trees. You want to describe a boom, just make it crash, right? Right? That adds a certain element to the sound effects to the game. It's descriptive in a way that your characters can understand without you having to necessarily have a dictionary level knowledge of words. And obviously that can help if you can be very descriptive of your situations, but that's kind of a shortcut to making your descriptions more immersive. So let me paint you a picture. You're starting your game, you're using a virtual tabletop, it's a Sunday night, you finally got the group back together after a month without playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're about to jump into your game and you're describing your scene and you realize your mic's not working. No one can hear you. You're getting a lot of chats, you're getting people that you can hear in your headset saying, "Hey man, you're muted, I can't hear what you're saying, your mic's not working." And you end up spending the next half hour troubleshooting your microphone instead of playing Dungeons and Dragons. You can avoid that simply by making sure you test your equipment before you start your game. Make sure everyone tests their equipment before you start. Nothing's more frustrating than trying to play D&D and you're trying to figure out how a camera works. You're trying to get a mic to work. Or if you're using a tool like Foundry where you need to do like direct peer-to-peer connection to get it to work, or open up firewalls or port forward and stuff like that, that can get frustrating too. So you want to make sure that people can connect to your server. You want to make sure your mic is working, everyone's mic is working, everyone's cameras are working, because you don't want to be fiddling with audio settings and server settings for like the first half hour to hour of your game. It's going to pull everybody out of it, and you're just going to be frustrated by the end of it. Now, there's other distractions you need to check out as well, because there's physical distractions that people run into due to their environment. So try to make sure that you and your players, when you get ready to play a game, are in an environment where they're not distracted by what's going on around them. Sometimes that's unavoidable, like maybe folks have kids, maybe folks are in college and they have a roommate right in their room, but if they have the capability, get them to a secluded location where they don't have stuff going on behind them or around them so they can focus on the game. That's going to make them more immersed in the game. From a DM perspective, this is easy to do, but to limit distractions, just make sure you prep. Make sure you prep your game. Make sure you have your maps ready that you want to show. Make sure you have the creature stats ready that you want to use if you're going to be using monsters. Make sure that you are primed and ready for like the kind of the mindset of NPCs that might be interacting with your players, because if you're digging around in your notebook or in your handouts for like a minute just so you can hold on, let me grab this character sheet, that's going to be frustrating to you and your players as well. So make sure you limit distractions when you play your game. So imagine your party. They're going through the forest. They hear like rustles in the brush beside them. You know, the leaves waving in the treetops. And they kind of rush through the forest to get away from whatever is chasing them. And they approach this babbling brook. And as they follow the river up, it kind of gets bigger and bigger until it's this rush of rapids, and they see a swinging drawbridge over it. That's a very descriptive scene. But you know what would make it awesome is if you could hear the babbling brook, if you could hear the creatures rustling in the trees. Use sound effects in your games to make this happen. And what's awesome is Roll20 has the jukebox that you can upload sound effects to, but better yet, they even have pre-loaded sound effects that you can use in your game to make those games more immersive. And that goes alongside with music, because using music can add a thematic element to your game as well. Imagine you have a big bad evil person. You can upload your favorite theme song from a video game that you like. So like I like to use Elden Ring and The Witcher and, you know, Dark Souls themes to attach to my villains. And what's awesome is like we live in a world where like people are making covers of these theme songs. So you can get like a piano cover and play that while they're talking to the villain, because it's kind of like a more low-key setting. In the fight, when they're fighting the villain, get a metal version of the theme song, right? Let those guitars kind of rock and roll as the kind of this extreme fight goes on. But yeah, use music, use sound effects. It can really make your games amazing. So yeah, that was 7 tips to making your game immersive using Roll20. Let me know what you think. Use these tips in your games, see how they work. Come back, let me know how it went for you, and give me tips too. You know, I am not all-knowing. I would love to hear your tips on how you use Roll20 to make your games immersive. But with that being said, like the video if you liked it. Please consider subscribing, and if you want to, go ahead and check out my Patreon at patreon.com/dungeonfire. Stay toasty.